Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional turned entrepreneur, Sumedha Khoche from Singapore. Sumedha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Sumedha is the CEO and founder of KinderPass, which has for its mission reimagining child health and development. And in her earlier role, she worked for Procter & Gamble and PepsiCo. So Sumedha, let's start talking about KinderPass. But before we get there, tell me, what was your motivation to give up a lucrative career in the corporate world and become an entrepreneur?
I guess as all entrepreneurs, right, we are kind of, we get smitten by an opportunity, the chance to make a difference in the world, and we jump at it. And I think the motivation for me was a little bit personal as well, because my mom's a doctor. So I've always been surrounded by healthcare professionals and engineers. And I think somewhere down the line, when I became a parent, I thought this is the right opportunity for me to also create something which will be more meaningful. Again, at P&G also, we used to do a lot of meaningful things. But this was, my way of kind of breaking out from the products mold into services and into using tech to actually really help parents give their child the right start.
Fascinating. So now tell me about KinderPass. What do you do here?
All right. So we're a digital child health and development platform. In a nutshell, what we do is what happens between when you leave the hospital with your baby to the time your child enters school. It's that kind of a gap that we're trying to bridge. We're trying to tell parents how exactly to track their child's development and what are the things that they can do to boost the child's development. And if there are any delays or if there's anything that's, kind of off the mark, then we will help them also connect to the right experts. So it's all in all like a full stack digital health clinic for kids.
Fascinating. So tell me, what are some of the key needs of young parents in the first 5 years?
Right. I guess it's a spectrum, right? It's a journey, because as your child goes from infancy to toddler to preschooler, you also kind of have to shift gears at each stage. First and foremost, I think it's like the best job in the world that nobody has prepared you for.
Correct.
Right? So you're going in with your instincts, but there's always a lot of doubt and a lot of uncertainty. That, am I doing the right thing? Is this happen? Is this normal? Does this happen to other kids also? Or so there's always that level of uncertainty where you're kind of second guessing everything that you're doing. That's not like a normal job, right? In a normal job, you get a playbook, you have sponsors, mentors, a very clear career progression ahead of you, right? So somewhere this uncertainty is very, very befuddling. A lot of the challenges in the beginning are related to health and physical health, right? For example, flat head, or it could be baby sneezing, cold cough, a lot of the things that we see at a physical level.
Sure.
I think the baby's needs are also very physical at this stage. Later on, it becomes related to language, related to, what can I do at home to support my child's growth? Am I doing the right thing? Am I giving the right toys, clothes, all the stuff that comes in? So it's a lot of products, diapers, is that right? And I'm making the right choices. Because you're making decisions for somebody for the first time. And getting judged by, by everybody around you for those decisions.
Absolutely. Yes.
And then later on, it becomes more related to learning, because now parents are aware, right, that what we do in our immediate environment, that has a huge bearing on the child, their development, how their brains are functioning, how the progression is happening. I think that's very interesting because that we also sense that shift happening. Why are parents now more eager to understand why certain things are happening? Earlier, they would take some things as given. Dadi ne kaha hai, karo. But, there is now a shift happening. No, but, I've read that crawling is good for the baby. Or aap keh rahe ho ki crawling se knees kale ho jayenge. So which one is it? They want to know, because this is the generation which is used to researching everything. Correct. Right? From the food that we're eating to groceries or everything, music, travel, we research and then we make our decisions. So I think that's one shift. In terms of need, you would have been through this yourself. It is a very stressful time, correct, right? You're managing your career because you're in the peak of your career as well. You're mid-management probably juggling two jobs. Your wife has a job, you have a job. there's this new child and this creature who's moving and talking, and like, okay, what can I do? I don't have time. Yes, I need to play with my baby, but reality is I'm working from home. What do I do all day? Right? So which part of it do I do? Which part do I delegate? Which part do I defer? Classic management, right?
Well said, yeah.
Applied to child development. Those are primary challenges, I guess. Time, and it's always a scarcity of time.
Fascinating. So it's interesting you're saying this. When our children were born in the early to mid 80s or mid to late 80s, the only reference point we had was either older parents or your doctor or Dr. Spock.
Right.
Now, as I see the younger parents, a lot seems to have changed from the times of Dr. Spock. And you just mentioned something about knees, while crawling. Right. I'd love to get your perspective on how parenting has been changing over the years.
Right. And I think it's a fascinating topic because, again, parenting is unlike anything else that we do, right? It's so rich in terms of emotional involvement. Correct. It's not like any other decision that we take. I think what has stayed consistent, I'll touch on that first, is that, again, I'm not very, very familiar with Dr. Spock's, entire series.
No, you shouldn't be. It was 55 decades ago.
But from what I, see is that he was trying to make, a shift in the time of, in the thinking of that time, which was that, hey, you need to be more involved, you need to nurture, and a lot can change if you nurture at the right time. So I think that stays, because as human beings, our brains and the way development works has remained the same, right? A baby's brain needs the proper nourishment, a stress-free environment. It needs proper sleep, nurturing relationships so that, that safety net is built. Yeah. And then you need, stimulation, that back and forth interaction that needs to happen between a caregiver, need not always be a parent. It could be a dada, dadi, nana, nani, or even, auntie. But it has to happen as a back and forth communication. I think there's a lot more knowledge which is out there in the public sphere. And in neuroscience is also, and development psychology as well, right? It's progressed leaps and bounds. There have been numerous studies. So if you look at the last 20 years, it's like, the entire world of neuroscience has been laid open for us to take and to reapply at home. So that bit is definitely new. And second thing is, now we have a phone in our pocket, right? That's literally our entry to the world. Right. And through that, it becomes very easy to share things with you on a daily basis, for instance. I mean, the way this is happening, you sitting in India and me in Singapore, facilitated by technology, right? And the same thing is, I think, helping parents. Sometimes it gets to be a little bit of a challenge too, because earlier comparisons were happening with immediate family, neighbors. वो चल रहा है, ये नहीं चल रहा, वो बात कर रहा है, ये बात नहीं कर रहा, something of that sort. Now it is on social media, hey, his child is doing this or her daughter is doing this. That comparison also sets in.
Absolutely.
So, little bit of, I think we'll have to be a little watchful in how we use technology, but I think those are the broad changes I see, the good and the bad.
Very well said. And, over the years, parenting has been passed down the ages through parents, grandparents of the young couple.
Right.
And yet technology is beginning to play a big role, and you just shared a little bit of it. But I'd love to get your perspective on, in the early days, as you said, बच्चे अपने आप बड़े हो जाते हैं. My nani and my dadi used to say that. Today's parents are far more conscious and careful. What drives this extra care, and if I can use a strong word, what drives this paranoia?
I think it's justified. The paranoia is also justified.
I'm sure.
One thing was, when you know better, you do better.
Correct.
Right? So one thing is just the availability of the knowledge and the right information. Like earlier, the way our grandparents brought up our parents, or the way our parents brought us up, the environment has changed. Correct. Right? So to thrive in a particular environment which has changed, your techniques will also have to change. So your grandparents did not have to contend with YouTube. You had an army. It was a village, right? The way we all stayed, it was like community living. So it was never a fact that, oh, mujhe kahin jana hai, who should I leave my child with? There was always a support net, a safety net around you. That doesn't exist today. I can't just leave my child at home if I have to go somewhere, right? So the care system has to evolve. That's number one, because, things have changed. Second, there are a lot more things also coming to our attention, right? Things like screen time. Hey, you watch TV, you never, nothing happened to you. But that was Doordarshan coming for 1 hour on a Sunday. That's very different from this constant 24/7, where it is literally like, cocaine for a young child's brain. So those are the ways in which, I feel things have to evolve. It is natural. And we have the benefit of so much more information. Like we know now that say for example, formula milk and breast milk, what to opt for, when to opt for. There are choices available which are evidence-backed. So in the face of evidence-backed, new data, we have to change our opinions as well. That's the classic Bayesian theory, right? You have to be open to changing your beliefs. And not to say that the way our parents or grandparents did certain things were always wrong. Of course not. We all agree with certain things like home remedies or things like, certain things that have been passed on from generation to generation. The classic one I can think of is how you had story sessions by your dadi or your nani. That's amazing. And that's something that we're losing, right? How many kids these days do you see with a phone versus how many kids do you see being read to or being told stories to? So I would say we're losing out the awesome gems of our tradition while, retaining some of these old-fangled notions, not showing a mirror to a baby. The superstitional part kind of remains, while the evidence-backed stuff, which is actually really good, right, is kind of fading away. So that's a little bit of a pity.
Fascinating. One of these, I'm sure I'm going to be seeing a book coming out from, Dr. Sumedha Khoche.
I hope so.
But, you were also, when I was reading about you, you also done a lot of research in for early childhood and neuroscience.
That's right. Yeah.
I'd love to learn a little bit about what your findings were.
Findings, a lot of them I actually brought up before. Very consistent. A lot of the stuff that we take for granted as adults, it could be very simple stuff like the way you're sitting today, your posture. It can actually be traced out to the tummy time you had as a child. Your handwriting, your motor coordination, balance, a lot of it was set in that story that your parents wrote in the first 5 years. So literally that is that chapter in our lives is so crucial. And even I did not know a lot of these things before I started researching this. And that's how my firstborn was raised without me having the benefit of this. And my daughter, of course, I obviously raised differently now that I know a lot more. Those techniques I'm applying there. Second one was, this entire learning, it starts from birth. It doesn't start at school. It's a wrong notion that we have that, padne ke liye school jao, ghar pe to bacche pad jayenge, right? It's not that. Your experiences, your back and forth interaction, that really is the critical thing, right? So it's like having a million locked doors and each back and forth interaction kind of giving you a key to unlock that door, right? So imagine if all those doors are there, they're there for everybody. But if you provide a phone or just a regular video on YouTube, it's not going to unlock 99.99% of the doors, right? So that's the travesty. So having that multi-sensory experience, how crucial it is, I think that was one of the biggest learnings. So, and that's something that I take, to heart, and I apply it with my kids every day, that if there is a way to make any learning multi-sensory, I would want to do that. Like maths, it need not be worksheets. It has to be number rods. It has to be tangrams. It has to be numicons, because it has to be concrete, something that you can do with your hands that will impact your mind. So this physical and cognitive skills are kind of intertwining. That's something that, obviously came from this research, and that's very, very powerful.
Oh, fascinating. And yet, Sumedha, there is a difference between the way a firstborn is treated and a secondborn is treated.
True, very
and my mother always used to say, and ki sara attention firstborn par, second to apne aap bada ho jata hai. What are your perspectives?
Oh, interesting. And I really hope I don't see my kids watching this It'll have a lot of dramatic outcomes.
I know.
But I think with the firstborn, you're a little bit more scared, right? It's you come with that mindset of, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Oh my God, what's going to happen? And with the second one, you kind of start with what's the worst that can happen? Let me wing it, from there. So you get also a little bit more settled that I've done this before. I'm not, a complete idiot. I'll be able to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing also is that, you probably are a little bit more in control.
Mm-hmm.
And this was wonderful advice that was actually given to me by my son's teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, you have to be present and very mindful of your firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
Even as the baby, the cute baby, the baby everybody wants to hug, will demand a lot of attention. Remember that she will not remember who fed her, bathed her. Your job is just to keep her fed, dry, warm, secure. She's good.
Sure.
But his needs are going to be very emotional. He will remember who gave him attention. So carve out that, that little bit of time, which is just one-on-one me time with your firstborn. He'll remember, because if he's at that age, he will remember who gave him attention, what he got, what he did not get. So that emotional need becomes very strong to cater to. And the third thing, I think the younger child, and I'm a younger child, so I'll say this, without any shame, you always have a role model, right? The first one is just going into an uncharted territory, right? They're just figuring their way out. The second one has a way that, okay, this is a way. I have to decide, this is a benchmark already. Which way of the benchmark do I go? Do I do this way or this way? They learn faster, because a lot of the stuff that is happening is common. So the books that we used to read to, my kids, they were common books because, well, I can't, take out time separately. So it was a common exercise. So I guess that also helps the younger one learn more things. Like my younger born, I remember we started playing Uno with her when she was just 2.5. And that helped her with color recognition, letters, everything, because she wanted to be a part of it. So it became a very natural exercise. She was like an advanced express program without us, doing it intentionally for her. She benefited.
Oh, fascinating. So, Sumedha, coming back to KinderPass, it's a platform where you're also creating a community for parents.
Mm-hmm. In a way, yeah.
In a way, how does it help to share experiences and learnings, and what are some of the advantages?
So, first of all, I wanted to kind of point out that we're not your classic Facebook community or a WhatsApp group, right? Where, there are a lot of voices going on and becomes very hard to moderate content. So this is an expert-led platform. So what we try to do is build that community in a very live Q&A fashion, right? So yesterday we had a very nice session with a physiotherapist, and she's a lactation consultant and she's an early years specialist who has great passion in this area. And that was a live Q&A session. So there were a bunch of parents who joined in, all in the same boat. They had different questions. Sometimes just hearing about different journeys opens your mind to the possibilities of, there being so many different ways of doing things. And sometimes it's very mind-opening as well, because you never considered such a thing for your child, for instance. In fact, yesterday there was a pediatrician who had joined in, and she said, hey, a lot of this, I did not realize how important it was. And, I'm here so that I can give this information to my patients as well. Because, obviously knowledge gets outdated and some of the learnings don't get transferred. So we believe in a more expert-led community where all your questions are gathered, answered by the expert. And at the same time, we don't lose any of the evidence-backed stuff. But yeah, it's more about sharing each other's journey or understanding that there are different paths possible.
Fascinating. So I've got time for my one more question.
Sure.
And my question to you is, I remember when our first child was born, I would tell my mother, I said, when he starts turning over, all my problems will be solved. Then I said, when he starts walking, everything will be solved. Then, I said something else, and when he goes to school. And she said, no, it never changes. And she says, I was 29 or 30 then. She said, I still worry about you. Yeah. So my question to you is, do you see your own KinderPass going beyond 5 years?
Eventually might be, one thing I've learned through this entrepreneurial journey is never say never. Correct. But the other thing that I've learned is focus is very important, especially in the early days, right? And we are literally like an infant or a toddler right now, learning to walk. So yes, we dream of running the marathon one day, but just not now. right? It has to be measured and kind of tracked.
Okay.
And the other thing is our area of focus, the problem is so complex, Ashutosh, because we're working in early years, right? And if we could do one thing well, it would be, preventing all preventable developmental delays. Because we know that if we kind of assess and track right now, the outcomes and, the entire life for a person can change. So I think that is really our core area of focus, how we can help parents understand their child's development, kind of also track, so we've also provided trackers for in English and in Hindi, so that at each month what is the normal expectation, and then if there is a red flag, the parent instinct will work. Take it to a developmental pediatrician, take it to a specialist, don't wait and watch. So really the problem here is so immense and it's so unmet that we can't take our eyes off it right now. Eventually, maybe yes, but yeah, it's literally, the difference between first steps and marathon. Well, ambition is there, desire is there, but it's really now that we need to focus on the first steps.
Very well said. And my last question, I have time for one more question. It's a quick question. You must be dealing with so many young parents. How does culture impact parenting?
Oh, tremendously. Because, about say 70-75% of the parents on our platform are from India. About 45% are dads. So between, moms and dads also, there's a different way or ethos of parenting style. But culture plays a huge role. And we see that, right? Because as per the Hofstede framework, there are different dimensions. Sure. And especially for us, right? Say relationships or our, how we see hierarchy, the power structures. Maine kaha hai isliye kar do. Whether it is positive parenting, how is discipline viewed, how are, academic goals viewed. Like if, say, a 4-year-old is not writing in Australia or even US or Canada, it is considered okay. Yeah, 4-year-olds are supposed to play. Do you have enough Play-Doh? Right? They'll ask you those things first. And here people are fretting about 3 or 4-year-olds not writing, not knowing that, the muscles are not yet developed. So I think in terms of how much control do we want to have, how much academics plays a role, because that's achievement orientation, right? That I want to be able to show that how do we know whether we did well as parents? It obviously the results are revealed, when the child is 17, 18, college, job, whatever. But there's always that next what, kitne number aaye. So that number becomes, focused. That's one. Then individualism, whether my style is okay, how much of it is a community thing. Those factors also come into play. So yeah, I would say culture plays a huge role.
Amazing. Sumedha, on that note, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for actually making me remember, our first son in 1985 and our second son in 1988 and the journey we went through. And thank you for talking to me at such great length on so many different aspects of parenting. I'm sure thousands and thousands of people will be benefiting from you. Thank you again and good luck.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for patiently listening. I could probably go on and on. It's years of research, but yeah, if there's anything that I would want, the audience to kind of take away from this conversation is, if at all you have a child at home who is, below the age of 5, please do a developmental monitoring. We take it for granted sometimes, but it's really, the magic of early intervention is amazing. So yeah, please don't wait and watch, act.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.